Hey everyone, so I'm here talking about superheroes, and I got a couple of my favorites. I even got little movie covers to show you. I've got Wonder Woman over here. Now, Wonder Woman was created by Moulton Marston. This was supposed to be the finest example of a lady that was freed from everything, and she was supposed to rival even the superpowers of Superman. So, a couple of other things about her. She's got these little bracelets that are powerful against anything. She also has her lasso of truth, which she could just put on anybody, and if they're lying, it burns them. But if they're telling the truth, nothing happens. A couple of other fun facts is that she is the goddess of war. And alongside that, she is the founder of the Justice League. And I thought I'd start it off only because we were supposed to have this one over the summer, but I guess we have to wait a little bit. So now on to the next obvious choice. Now we've got the Man of Steel. He was played by Christopher Reeves, and right over here, he was played by Henry Cavill. So a couple of fun facts. He was born in Krypton. He was also the first superhero ever to be created in 1933, but he never really made the comics until 1938. Now, a couple of other facts alongside that are the fact that the S stands for hope in his world, and he is also weak to kryptonite, which is the green substance that you see as little crystals. Now, another big thing about Superman is that he's so powerful that in many different versions of the comics, he is seen as a villain. Even recently, he's been shown in the games and comics in Injustice as an evil Superman. He went crazy at some point, and he even got the Joker down, so, Now, this one's a little bit of a cheat, considering that he's not exactly a superhero. But when it comes to being a superhero, the whole point is that you do the right thing and help other people along the way. Now, the Iron Giant has to figure out what's good and evil because he's not a human. So, it teaches us a really good lesson along the way, and on top of that, he wants to become Superman. And that ends up being one of the biggest plot points in the entire movie. And then lastly, this movie is directed by Brad Bird. Now, most people might not know who that is, but he is the director of The Incredibles and The Incredibles 2. So, how's that for thought? And now, of course, the next obvious choice comes with a lot of options. We've got Batman, I've got the Good Collection, and of course, the Tim Burton Collection right over here, and a couple of the oddballs over here. Now, Batman has had by far the most iterations out of any comic book hero ever. Like I mentioned before, we had the Tim Burton ones, which were the really decent ones. This one was the first superhero blockbuster, like I mentioned in one of the videos. Batman Forever was received okay. And then we've had the George Clooney right over here, and that really didn't do well. But later on in 2005, Christopher Nolan made Batman Begins and the whole Dark Knight trilogy. Now, I know a lot of you tend to quote any of these Batman movies, and of course, here's The Dark Knight, considered the greatest superhero movie of all time. To this day, it is the highest rated. And then we've got The Dark Knight Rises with Bane. Like I said, don't even need to mention it. A lot of people have already seen these movies. Now, I really don't think I need to give any trivia about Batman because he's already well known, so I'm going to go on to some of the other characters that we've got on our list. Now, next up on our list, we've got X-Men First Class. Right there you see Magneto. This is his origin story. He was considered an anti-hero around this time. Now, when it comes to anti-heroes, it is somebody that you root for that has done good and bad things, thus making them an anti-hero. They're stuck in the middle between good and evil. Now, this is basically the origin stories of how all the characters came to be, from Mystique to Charles Xavier going on his wheelchair to Magneto eventually becoming evil. Now, a lot of people don't know this, but when it comes to characters in the comic book universe, Magneto and Joker are always toe-to-toe when it comes to being the best supervillains in comic book iterations. So, just thought I'd like to share a nice little fun fact about that. And then we have Thor Ragnarok right over here. This is the god of thunder with Loki, and of course we've got the Hulk and a couple of other characters alongside that. Now, Thor debuted in the 1950s in another comic book that wasn't his own, and he was created by Stan Lee. Now, a couple of other fun facts is that he is the Norse god of thunder. Now, another fact that wasn't shown in the first Thor movie was that he almost started a war with the ice giants only because he won an arm wrestling battle, and that started the whole fight. So you kind of wish they would put that in the movie to make it more comedic. And of course, he wields the hammer Mjolnir, which can only be held by those who are worthy. Now, even though he's the size of a human, he's like around 6 feet, he looks like he would weigh around 300 pounds, but since his muscles are really dense, he weighs around 640 pounds. That's crazy. And of course, he's got his adopted mischievous brother, Loki, who you see in all the Avengers movies. But that's pretty much it at the moment. Now, if you were watching movies around the early 2000s, you probably recognize this Spider-Man right over here. We've got Tobey Maguire in Spider-Man 1 and 2. Most people do not talk about the third one. Let's just keep it at that. In the mid-1990s, a lot of people were hearing about how they were going to be making a Spider-Man movie with James Cameron behind the direction. Now, the obvious choice at that time was Tom Cruise for Spider-Man, but it didn't go through. Now, the funny thing is that when it came to these Spider-Man movies, a lot of people were a little apprehensive about who was going to be making these films. Now, Sam Raimi, back then, was known for making a lot of crazy horror films, but he didn't disappoint us, and he made these awesome flicks. Now, with the first one, we've got the Green Goblin, which, if we were going to the DC Universe, this would be the equivalent of the Joker, except he's a mad scientist who happens to own Oscorp and create a bunch of awesome, crazy stuff. But then we've got the ultimate Spider-Man interpretation of the early 2000s with Spider-Man 2 with Dr. Octopus. Now, Dr. Octopus would basically be Spider-Man if he went evil to an extent. And he would actually have 8 limbs. But, like I mentioned before, we don't talk about Spider-Man 3. And, of course, we have to talk about these two boys right over here. Now, these two superhero movies are the highest grossing superhero movies of all time. This one made over $2.1 billion, and then this one went on to becoming the highest grossing movie of all time, passing Avatar. Now, if you guys are really not a fan of spoilers, I would definitely recommend watching these, but a couple of minor things. We've got Thanos, remember, spoilers, who eventually, at the very end of the movie, destroys half of all the superheroes, which leads to Avengers Endgame, in which they have to go back in time and try to reverse everything. Now, when we think of superhero movies, of course, we all think about Marvel movies. From Iron Man to Captain America to Thor to the Guardians of the Galaxy and, of course, Black Panther. And then we have this movie right over here, Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Now, when it comes to all the Spider-Man iterations, we've got the Tobey Maguire series, we've got the Tom Holland with the Avengers, and then we've got the Andrew Garfield series, which only got 2 movies. But most people, when this first came out, didn't think that this was a movie that was going to be as awesome as it is. In fact, this is the highest rated Spider-Man movie to date, and it won Best Animated Flick. Now, this follows all different kinds of Spider-Man, from Gwen Stacy over here when she got bitten by a spider instead of Peter Parker. We've got Miles Morales, and then we've got who was supposed to be the original Tobey Maguire, but got replaced by another. And on top of that, we've even got Spider-Pig, we've got Spider-Man Noir, and of course, we've got Penny Parker right over here. Now, I like to end it this way because this is one of the final movies that was made before Stan Lee passed away. Now, when it comes to a lot of the superheroes that we see in there, we also got to keep in mind that sometimes just one random act of kindness can really help everybody out. And in order to be a superhero, you don't always have to be as muscular as you want to be. It's all about the choices that you make. And like they mentioned, in Spider-Man 1, 2, and even in Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, with great power comes great responsibility. So we've got to remember to be kind to each other, help each other out whenever we can, and make the right choices. So there you guys have it, and I hope you enjoyed my nerd moments right over here with all these comic book characters that I have, and hope to see you guys very soon.